Meanwhile, space, JD, it is actually looking more and more like a junkyard, weirdly. Roughly 27,000 pieces of orbital debris or space junk is currently being monitored by the Department of Defense. And the problem is, it's only getting worse. So joining us now is Chad Anderson, managing partner over of Space Capital. Chad, good to see you as always. So let's start with the basics. What is space junk? And really, what are sort of the risks does it really pose to us down here on Earth here?
Well, I mean, it's our approach to throwing things around in space used to be similar to what an old Chevy Chase movie, for example. So where they would just take the fast food and throw it out the station wagon window while they were driving. So the debris is made up of spent, defunct satellites, rocket stages, and debris of weapons tests and things that have hit satellites and caused a bunch of debris. So, it's an evolving landscape, and it's becoming more of an issue as we've got more commercial activity in low Earth orbit and more of these weapons tests like we've seen, over the last couple of weeks.
Well, Chad, one thing I didn't know, apparently researchers believe that there's so much space junk that is hovering around the planet that we might develop space rings around Earth, but this would be all junk that is basically of those rings. Do you agree with that assessment? And is that true that this would happen?
Well, it's theoretically possible, and hopefully we get in front of that, and I think we are. I mean, what's causing this is a lot more activity, right? So space is large, but it's a finite resource, and a lot has changed over the last 10 years. So we have seen the number of satellites launched last year was up 20x what it was 10 years ago. So we've got about 3,000 satellites in orbit, and that is expected to grow 50 to 100 times over the next 10 years. So things are accelerating. We're on an exponential curve here, and people want to, the satellite operators want to know that they can operate safely in their orbits. So that's one piece of it, but the debris is actually 100 times more. There's more pieces of debris, like you mentioned earlier, about 30,000 pieces that we know of that could impact those orbits.
Well, I'm curious then, Chad, with all these companies that are trying to sort of conquer the next frontier of space, Blue Origin, SpaceX, the like, is this going to make this space junk problem worse when we have more of these sort of, tourism guides going outside of the planet here?
Well, it's more of an orbital problem, so it's not going to affect really the likes of Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin, but for SpaceX and the space station, it certainly could. I mean, the Russian weapons test that happened last week certainly caused the debris field that was in the way of the International Space Station, and the astronauts on board got into escape pods monitoring the situation, and they were ready to abandon ship. So we have had a sustained human presence on the space station for 20 years. So the fact that we were about to abandon it because of debris should be a bit of a wake-up call. So this could definitely impact space station missions, but also the Crew Dragon missions that were in similar orbits, that we saw go up with Inspiration 4 a few months ago.
Well, what sort of a timeline, Chad, are we looking at here? I mean, is there a point here where we reach a point of no return where all of a sudden there's just too much out there and there's nothing that we can do here?
Well, luckily, there's a lot of solutions that are underway. So, that is a potential doomsday scenario that I think we're going to avoid. So a company like our portfolio company, Leo Labs, has a network of ground-based radars that's enabling them to track in near real time objects as low as 2 centimeters, as small as 2 centimeters. So something like a golf ball size. And this is, providing data that's enabling us to track these orbits and keep these orbits clean and safe for operations. It's also enabling things like insurance to come back into the market. I mean, there's so much activity and so much debris and so many new satellites being launched. These insurers didn't have the data to really underwrite these policies. So they sort of en masse exited the market a few years ago. We're going to start to see them come back as we get more data online. And, the big mega constellations, Starlink and others, are customers of these services. And we're seeing more of these companies come online. So this is providing the data that's going to enable the debris mitigation solutions that are following shortly behind.
Well, Chad, what can be done, or can there be anything done to sort of clean it up, or are there things that we can basically do down here to help sort of mitigate the process, or is this opening up down the road for a company maybe to be the one that's going to be up there cleaning this up?
Well, so understanding what's there and what needs to be cleaned up is the first step, right? So we're addressing that, and that's being solved now. The next step is companies that are actually doing the debris removal. And we have, there's several companies that have raised on the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. These are still private venture-backed companies, but at their growth stages and with prototypes in orbit that are capable of deorbiting some of these satellites. But we've also got SpaceX's Starship is coming online. This is a highly capable, large, fully reusable vehicle that can do all kinds of things. It's going to take us to the moon and Mars. It can launch 400 Starlink satellites at a time. It could be its own space station. This thing can do a lot. One of the things that it can do, that Gwynne Shotwell has said, that it can open up its hatch on the way back down and scoop up some of this garbage on the way back from some of its missions. So there are debris mitigation solutions coming online, and I think just in time.
A really interesting conversation. Something I had no idea what was happening. Chad Anderson, managing partner of Space Capital. Chad, always a pleasure to have you here on Cheddar News.